Twisted Christian. Today I'm going to be discussing what happened with Saudi Arabia. If many of you don't know, two of Saudi Arabia's oil installations were hit, and there's a lot of information coming out about that and who's responsible. But there's also a lot of information that's coming about as far as, would the price of oil go up? And there's many different articles that are stating that it could jump from anywhere from $10 a barrel to up to, in this particular article here done by Forbes, to $100 a barrel. Now that's one of the things that I've been looking into and seeing how we could take advantage of that. But the other things that I'm going to be discussing is, how does this affect the United States? How does this affect even Iraq? But before we get into that, I'd like to thank you guys for your support on Patreon. And as you can see here, I've made some posts about certain particular things. And people are discussing and they're posting their information about their thoughts. And they're posting about information about the stocks that they're also looking at. And so on this particular, on some of these posts, we're looking at mining stocks, we're looking at oil stocks, we're looking at specific other industries that Trump has been talking about. And we're also talking about the simple stone. If you guys haven't seen that video, go ahead and watch that video. And we're going to be looking at space mining. So people are posting their thoughts about that, and I will be going back and posting different things concerning that on the Patreon. So if you haven't subscribed to the Patreon, right now it is still $1, and at any moment that's probably going to change. So you guys need to get in and get in now, because after here within the next week or so, the dollar one will now no longer be available. There are people that are doing research. I'm spending so much time researching and looking at different things so we can find stocks and other opportunities for you guys to invest in. Not only that, the Kim Clement Wells. Now, one of the things that I wanted to discuss first was this whole thing that occurred in Saudi Arabia. And one of the things is that, all these analysts, they're saying different things. And, that's one of the things that when something like this happens, the price of a barrel of oil should not jump up $40. And I got this website that I got pulled up, and it talks about crude oil and commodity prices. And you see here WTI crude oil 54.85, Brent crude oil $60.22, and they're saying that this could jump up to $100. And so that's one of the things that I want to discuss is how we could take advantage of that. But also too, the strange thing about this is that I pulled this article from July 6, 2016, and it says here that the U.S. has the largest oil reserves in the world. The U.S. holds more oil reserves than anyone else in the world, including Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Venezuela. And that's one of the strange things, is that this should not affect the price in the United States. And every time there's something that goes on in another place all around the world, it doesn't matter where it's at, it's always an excuse to raise the price of oil, even though the United States has the largest oil reserve in the world. But the way I look at it is it is an opportunity to invest in American companies drilling for gas and oil here within the United States. And that's what this channel is about. It's about to see how we can look at these things, strategize, and try to benefit from this. I'm not going to pull these articles up, but it just talks about how that it's ready to tap its emergency oil reserve. But I think also Trump is going to use this as an opportunity to put the United States on the map as far as having the most oil in the world. And that's how we're going to see how we can benefit from that. From companies that are cheap enough, the stocks are cheap enough, any kind of other investments that we can take advantage of, that we can invest in, so that we can become financially independent before the dinar changes in value. So we're going to see over the next week what's going to happen with this, and if there is a retaliation, how will that affect the oil prices? How is that going to affect the stock market overall? Not necessarily oil company stocks, but just to see how this all plays out. I do suspect that, like in this article, America has a huge stash of emergency oil. This is why. All right, and in this article, it just says here, today the United States is one of the world's largest producers and a major seller, not just a buyer of oil. The United States still has its stash. The Strategic Petroleum Oil Reserve contains 645 million barrels, the world's largest backup oil supply. On Sunday, the U.S. President Donald Trump authorized the use for the emergency oil reserve following weekend attacks on Saudi Arabia oil facilities. So I'm going to just tell you what I think about that. First of all, I think that this is when if the gas prices do go up, if the barrel of oil does go up, right? We're going to be looking to see what happens when we first wake up in the morning, and we're going to be seeing certain things. We're going to be seeing whether or not how much it does go up, and whether or not if there's a retaliation, if it's going to go up even more, and which particular companies are involved in that. And that's one of the reasons why you have to be ready. You have to be able to ready to go into sign into your trading account and look at those companies that are involved in that uh, within the United States, pumping oil, looking for oil, and everything else, so that you can be ready. And for those of you who are not ready, I'm going to tell you this. There are links below down in the description, and you can get signed up with those trading platforms, because you guys have to be ready at any moment's time, and these things take time. So say for instance, if you haven't signed up for any trading platforms right now, and then this comes along, and there are people that are saying you need to invest in this or invest in that, or there's other things, whatever the case is, you're not ready. And some of you are holding on, to the dinar, as opposed to putting yourself into a position to invest. And some of these trading platforms, it could take anywhere from 2 to 3, and even some cases up to 5 or 6 days to get approved, and then you have to transfer money into your trading account and all of that, and that all takes time. And if you guys aren't ready for that, you guys might very well miss out what's going to happen this week, and that all remains to be seen. So I pulled this other article, the tax rate specter of oil at $100 a barrel. But in this particular article, they give different opinions, and some say anywhere from $65 a barrel to all the way up to $100 a barrel. And it just really depends on what takes place. They're looking at they're talking about maybe even 3 to 6 months before, they get back online and they can start pumping oil again. So there's definitely an opportunity, just depending on which companies you're invested in and which companies are going to benefit. Now, for me, I have to invest in stocks that are relatively cheap. There are a lot of smaller companies out there that are pumping oil, and I just have to take that chance, and hopefully that some of those stocks will rise because of what's going on. And I also believe that Trump may take advantage of this opportunity to tell the world, to tell the American citizens, look, every time there's something that goes on in another country, our gas prices go up. It shouldn't have to be that way, because we are the world's largest oil producer. We have more oil than anybody else. We can produce more oil than anybody else. And I just showed you in that particular article what's going on with the United States oil. So there's definitely an opportunity. It doesn't matter where you live, whatever countries you live in, you guys need to be looking at U.S. oil company stocks. So I'll just say that if you're not ready, if you're not prepared, then you need to be. You need to be doing your research. You need to be putting yourself into a position so when things like this come about, that you can be ready. The other thing I wanted to discuss is how is this going to affect Iraq? Okay, this article here came out over a week ago. And I discussed this in other videos about Iraq being, OPEC calling Iraq the problem child. Well, in this article says here, Iraq is pumping record oil, creating a fully blown migraine for OPEC's cutting plans. Well, now things have changed, right? Because what just happened in Saudi Arabia, so somebody's going to have to fill the gap. Iraq hit production figures in August with an output of 4.8 million barrels per day. That's absolutely insane. But you know what? What's happening in Saudi Arabia could benefit Iraq. And Iraq needs the money right now. They're struggling in a lot of areas, and I don't know how this is going to affect Iraq. I don't know, and that's the whole thing. I'll be watching the news when it comes to Iraq and oil to see what they're saying. Are they gonna? I know that Iraq committed to cutting back production, but are they now going to be cutting back on production? That all remains to be seen. And this is going to be very important because in other articles it talks about how a lot of the Arab nations may retaliate, and we're going to see how all this plays out. And so, yes, we might very well see, depending on if there is retaliation, yes, we could see prices at $100 a barrel. And this is going to be good for your investments if you're invested in gas and oil stocks. Now, it might not be good for those of you who, do a lot of driving, but if you're invested in the stock markets with the oil and gas, who knows what is going to happen, right? This very well may put you into a position, and this might be a very good opportunity for Iraq to step in and saying, "Hey, we can cover this. We got this. Saudi Arabia won't be making the money, but Iraq will be." So this could actually push Iraq into a whole nother position strategically with oil in that particular region. So, and that's going to be one of the things is that since they are pumping record oil, what companies are involved with that? And that's the thing. You got to do your research. You got to start looking at companies that maybe there are viable stocks that you can invest in. Not everybody has money to buy $120 stocks, right? So that's where your research comes in. And that's what we're discussing on the Patreon. I posted your thoughts on stocks that could rise, and there are people that are posting some of their information, some of the things that they are looking at. And they've also sent me information I'm doing some research on, but some of those posts will come out later on in the evening tomorrow that I could post on here. Hopefully they're still at the same price as they are now, but that's the whole thing. I posted a mining stock. It's a high risk penny stock that deals with mining gold, and the reason why it's a high risk is because if they don't get their stock up to $1 by the close to the end of December, well, they're going to have to do a reverse split. So hopefully they'll get their act together. But it's just something that I posted, something that I found interesting because they are involved in gold mining. And then I have another post that deals with an oil stock that's currently at 21 cents. I've discussed it before, and with everything that's going on in the Middle East, who knows how this is gonna play out. Plus, not only that, they are a U.S. company within the United States that does deal with oil. And then I also posted thoughts on stocks that could rise, right? So I wanted to know what other people are thinking about when it comes to certain oil and gas stocks, because that is going to be the big thing. Because the moment, and I think Mark Taylor talked about this, he prophesied about it. Trump says that we are energy independent. It's going to send a shockwave throughout the world, and which means the markets are going to have to react to that. And the American companies that are involved with the exploration, with the extraction and refinery of the oil with the United States are going to benefit greatly. And when that does take place, we shouldn't see at least our gas prices here in the United States go up and down every time something happens in another country. But if you're in another country, you need to start looking at some of these oil companies and gas companies that are involved in the exploration and extraction and refinery of oil. And just because you live in another country doesn't mean you can't necessarily invest in those American companies. So if you are on the Patreon and you have some good ideas concerning the oil and gas industry, to place your comment on these posts. Like I said, I think this is a really good opportunity, especially if you are invested in the dinar and how this we'll see how Iraq plays in all of this and with the oil. I think it's gonna be very interesting to see, if they step up or if they're still required to cut back. But I think all this does is it gives an opportunity for Iraq to shine even more. And a lot of people have said that we need gas. When Iraq may change their value once the barrel of oil changes to a certain price. Well, we might see that. I don't know. I still think we're going into 2020, but I think we're setting it up for the long term because a lot of analysts, from the things that I've read, they're looking at a 3 to 6 month time period before they can maybe even get back online and get everything going back to 100% production. But they also say this thing that happened in Saudi Arabia might be the first one. There might be some other things that come later on against other countries. I read another article where they talked about they're seeing drones flying over oil refineries in other countries within that region, right? So all I'm just going to say is brace yourselves and start looking and start researching, right? Don't be left behind, because if anything, if any of these things that you're invested in take off, it's going to put you in a whole different financial position. So, but these, like I said, this is just my opinion, and I just need you guys to do the research. If you guys have anything here on YouTube that you recommend, go ahead and place a comment. And if you guys haven't been on the Patreon, make sure you take advantage of that, because there are people that are sending me a lot of information that I'm going through, and I'll be posting them as I get to them and do the research, and then I'll be posting those for Patreon users only. So tomorrow, let's see what happens with oil stocks. Let's see what happens with the barrel of oil. Let's see the response from the United States, the oil markets. Let's see how this is going to affect Iraq and how it could be beneficial for Iraq. So guys, tell me what your thoughts are. Place your comment on below. And if you're on Patreon, go ahead and make your comments there. With that being said, Twisted Christian out.